Hey Weirdo, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about what everybody's talking about, AI. But if uh, but what if most companies are putting the cart before the horse? What if their ambitions of AI roadmaps are doomed to fail before they even begin? Our guest today argues that for many, that's exactly the case. Today he says the problem isn't AI models. It's their data plumbing. It's that their data plumbing is a mess of spaghetti. Our guest, Matt Soltau, a global director of strategy and operations at IntelliPaaS, an enterprise integration platform focused on making data truly AI ready. With nearly a decade of experience working across Europe, Asia, and North America, Matt has become known as the integration guy, the expert who ensures that AI and automation initiatives don't die because of bad data, brittle workflows, or complex regulations. Today, we're going to move past AI hype and talk about the foundational work that makes it all possible. We're going to unravel the spaghetti, discuss an AI ready backbone that discuss what an AI ready backbone strategy actually looks like, and navigate the compliance minefield of data resiliency and new AI laws. Matt, thank you for coming on the show, and I hope everybody can resonate with this.
But I really
So
appreciate it. It's great to be on. Thank you.
I just want to get into one thing that's really stuck out to me because I know about the spaghetti that is in enterprise data, but I really want to elaborate on that for our audience. Can you really explain what spaghetti data looks like in an enterprise software or an enterprise
Yeah, I think that's a good
organization?
one to start with. Spaghetti really refers to the two endpoints of various different data sources that need to be connected with another. So the average organization, and we're talking enterprise here, has 80 plus different applications. So most of them are enterprise applications. And to be honest, that's rapidly growing at the moment because of best of breed applications that are really coming in, which are highly specialized, smaller applications that do one thing extremely well and much better than the bigger guys, which is great. So that's where impressive startup stories have come out of it, etc. But basically, it's more and more applications that are being introduced into any environment, especially into corporations. If you now want to connect them with another, that's where the complexity really starts, because let's pick our 80 different applications. If you've got 80 applications and you want to connect them all with another from a point to point scenario, which means one point to another, you basically have 80 applications connecting with everything, which is 80 times 79. So an 80 times 79, I'll do the maths for you, is 6,320. And that's just the average amount of integrations that would be needed point to point if you're trying to connect your entire ecosystem. And again, 80 is just the average. So the spaghettiness to this is, first of all, spaghetti has two endpoints, two endings, and these two endings need to be managed. First of all, you need to create the spaghetti, yet another one, and you need to manage this. And in the end, it just looks like a big ball of spaghetti. Or I spend a lot of time in Asia. In fact, I'm in Hong Kong right now. Often I call it a bowl of ramen to just make it a little bit more locally appropriate, but the flavor is the same when it comes to entangledness.
And I do want to push in on that a little bit. It's not for a lack of these future preparation or anything like that. These applications were built to service the way they were supposed to service. The problem is when the organizations are like, oh, I like this feature and this data set from this application, but I want to use it in this application that has completely different code, completely different data, completely different everything. And that's where it really gets spaghettified. So
Yeah, that's it.
what are the first warning signs to tell you that the data is that an organization's data isn't ready AI
Well,
ready, sorry.
I was going to say the question is what readiness. If you're looking to define AI readiness, it's always looking backwards, right? What do you want to achieve, and which exact foundations are in place in order to make that a reality? So, an analogy we're often making is, and I'm sure you've heard this in some other scenario, but in sandbox environments, many things are possible. So, you're
Mm.
planning this out in a lab type of environment, very controlled. And we often call it the Ferrari engine that's being built in a lab environment. The reason I like using a car analogy is because some of the world's most well-known car brands actually use IntelliPaaS behind the scenes, including some of their suppliers, which obviously we're very proud of. But on the other side, that's obviously very corporate. On the other side, we also have small to medium businesses using it. And that kind of just goes down to how flexible is your platform to deal with sort of any sort of scenario. Anyways, that might be a different topic now. But in these sandboxes, great solutions are being created. So the best AI-powered solution might be created in that isolation. The moment you take that powerful concept out of its lab and you're dropping it into the wild world, i.e. the infrastructure you have, that's connecting your Ferrari engine to the pre-existing golf cart. And that chassis is going to snap immediately. Basically, the plumbing isn't ready. And that kind of means the underlying infrastructure of this isn't ready to support what you want to do with it. To be honest, you don't actually have to look very far in order to see early warning signs. The easiest one to see is when you're looking into your finance team is probably a good one, and ask them how processes are run. If they print documents, if there's PDFs being shared in a great extent, I'm not talking about one or two emails, but basically invoices are constantly shared with the same suppliers. Most businesses have very strong existing set of clients, classic 80-20 rule. And very often you'll find that either documents are still printed and scanned and emailed. No kidding, I just had that conversation last week with a very large enterprise. Or obviously in some form a PDF or an Excel file is shared. And I'm not talking about one-off, we're saying constantly.
Yeah.
So that is often a good giveaway.
Just to give an example here, we have that problem here with our electricity. We get a email with a PDF of our bill. We don't even have it through an automated system anymore. So yes, there are plenty of organizations out there that still do that kind of thing.
Yeah, and now imagine this at an enterprise level as well, right? Where you seemingly from the outside, enterprises don't just look impressive because they've got nice shiny logos on the side of buildings. But from the outside, they always look like very well organized machines. Really, when you peel, and you don't often have to peel too far, there's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to many things, especially when it comes to automation. Business transformation is really the underlying part to it. You know all about it.
Yeah. The biggest part, the thing that I notice is the government still works on those. Like the older companies that have no need to move, essentially, the monopolies of the world, the bigger companies that are making money regardless of how they change their systems. They're only looking into them now because everything's going to be blown away with AI coming out. And if they don't look into it now, they're going to be irrelevant come 5-10 years from now.
That's it. And it really, when it comes to that, the underlying data really needs to be basically it's the identity of the data needs to be quite diplomatic as well. And that's where things are falling out, because in some cases you've got departments not talking to another. In some cases you've got pure systems not talking to another. In some cases politics are involved. Actually, all the time politics are involved. But when we are looking at the transformation of it, it's really thinking of the company itself as its internal little United Nations. You've got your different little departments, and interest groups, but you also have the Republic of Finance, which runs on SAP. You've got clearly Kingdom of Sales that uses Salesforce or any other sort of CRM tool on top of it. They don't just speak different languages. They've got different ways how they govern data and how they look at it. When they're trying to engage with another, it's almost like there's no collaboration inside organizations for the most part. So we, as integration platforms, and I'm talking for the industry here, we act as the diplomatic corps inside of it. We make sure that the sales data is allowed to flow to the finance data, and that all happens in harmony and in real time or scheduled or however makes sense, right? So that nobody really has to cling to data themselves because they feel that they're losing it on the border by giving it to another department. It's really all about the collective, like the unification of that data And underlyingly, and I'm really just describing the plumbing here right now, the underlying plumbing of the data, that will provide your foundation for any AI advance afterwards. So step one, make sure your data is there. If it's isolated, if it lives in certain department silos or anything else, yeah, you will have issues.
That kind of elaborates into the next point that I wanted to go into. What are some core principles that you should be sorry, what does like a data foundation look like for like what are core principles that somebody should put in place so that their data is ready for this integration?
Yeah, on the principles in place, you've got on the one side, accessibility to data really needs to be taken care of first, right? So one part is access, the other one is the cleanliness of the data. I'll make one analogy here, and that is humans and our need for clean drinking water. In order for us to have a happy, healthy, functioning life, and on top of that, to think clearly, we need access, real-time access, especially to drinking water, and then in vast quantities of it. So if we don't have that, not just the body can shut down or we don't function as well, etc., but we actually, if you get too dehydrated, as you hallucinate. Now, you can guess where I'm getting with this. AI hallucination obviously is a topic, right? And what we want to make sure of is that access to, so obviously the AI doesn't think the way a human brain does, but we still need to provide the AI with real-time data. And that data is the equivalence of the water. And that's why I keep making plumbing analogies, because if the plumbing isn't there, you basically you don't have anything. So you've got certain buckets of isolation, and that's all well and good, but it doesn't work at scale. So if you really want to get to these data foundations, you really need to make sure where is your stuff, like where is your inventory, your information itself. And then from there, take that and move it to wherever necessary in real time. And that often changes. So going back to the spaghetti architecture, and this is where everything's connected, you need everything connected with another. But it's so difficult to connect everything with another at scale. So therefore, it makes sense to place an integration platform at the heart of it. The good ones don't store your data. They just move it from any source to any target in real time. And even better so, they're deployable where you need it. And that's the next part, because talk about where does the data sit? It might sit in one particular department or bucket, etc. You want to make sure that data doesn't go outside of the jurisdiction, sometimes for compliance reasons, sometimes for ethical reasons, etc., sometimes just for company reasons that don't live beyond it. We've recently had some conversations with companies in America that said in Canada, that said we don't want data to be shipped to America, even for AI processing. We said, no problem. You can decide, first of all, where the data platform sits, in that case on their server, on premises they wanted it, no problem. They've got the server. And on top of that, that any data that they wanted to train where they previously used a US model, they decided, no, we're going to invest in GPUs that are going to be locally available. We're going to host our own AI system. And we're going to make sure that none of that data, to an extent, is going to get farmed overseas. And that's a conscious decision that company made that had nothing to do with any sort of other regulatory. That was just an internal decision they wanted to make for themselves. But underlyingly, the core data foundation had to be in place first.
Fair. And I'm happy that a company is doing that in Canada, especially coming from the Ontario government. I know that we don't have a whole lot of data centers in Canada that are specifically Canadian and aren't run by Microsoft or Google or somebody else out there. So I'm happy that a company in Canada is trying to create their own model, their own sovereign data, and that they're doing it in a way that makes, I think, people trust their company. Do you think there's going to be a lot more companies going on the protection of human or user data going forward?
Here's my prediction. It's not just the companies that are doing it. Companies try to find the path of least resistance, especially from a commercial point of view. And in some cases, that means that overseas data centers, etc., are often being utilized because it's more convenient in some cases. Now, my prediction is as follows. Countries, like governments, are going to treat especially personal identifiable information or anything associated to that as data in the interest of national security. We're starting to get there. Everyone tends to look at Europe. Actually, it's Korea that started beating the Europeans to their own game when it comes to it. Now, what's happening here is that Korea has started to put an AI law in place, and that AI law at the moment only forces companies to label what is AI and what isn't. Call it a transparency law to an extent. However, it's going to get extended to, over the next few years, making sure that any data that's come in and is being used to actually train the models also has to be disclosed. Where has it come from? Where is it going? And that's not as easy as you think, because AI models, for the most part, it's a little bit like saying, where does the internet get its data from? And that can become really difficult to track. So unless you own the data pipelines and really know what's happening, because then what's happening is you can create a model similar to what we know from the post office. You're putting a letter in the mail, and that is just a piece of data that goes through the post office. And as we all know, the post office puts a stamp on it the moment they get it. So that's then your compliance seal that we can put on top of it, which actually we're just talking to a very large company in Korea that's looking to implement that. But again, this can be locally applicable, right? So it just comes down to how it's hosted and where it's deployed in the end. But we will see a lot more countries. Obviously, Europe is coming up next with releasing the final text. It's going to be inevitable that countries, less so companies, but countries are really trying to lock it down. Canada is a little bit of an outlier because you've got a very strong sense of national pride, etc. And that's a little bit of an outlier, but for the most part, it's regulatory driven.
So just to speak on that a little bit, I just wrote a paper on why Canada is behind on AI, mainly because instead of investing in Waterloo, where we created AI, we put it into our auto industry that was dying. And instead, we lost all our AI talent to the US and sold off all our companies with AI. And now we're just getting back into it. But Canada's really interesting in terms of we're very proud of our sovereignty and our own doing things, but we never capitalize on them. It's like we feel proud for making them, but then after that, it's like we don't care what the world does with it, is how I kind of put Canada in terms of creation of things. But at the same time, like I also see a lot of Canadians now building for themselves instead of the government, which I'm interested to see how it goes in the long run, because Canada isn't like the US. We are very much a socialist country where the government controls a lot of what we can do and say, and not say, but do in terms of business and building laws. But at the same time, Canadians are starting to fight back in terms of we want our own data sovereignty. We want to have a little bit more principles in our own country. So I'm interested to see where that goes. Can we talk about compliance for a little bit? Is there going to be so I know Korea has their transparency laws, and then I believe Switzerland just offered all of their citizens, what is it, copyright to all of their face and names and information. Are we going to start seeing countries do that as well? Start to individualize their data to the individual? Say, hey, like you own the rights to your looks and your person and your data.
I guess that depends on where you look in the world. Europe is a lot more ahead of that and also puts a lot more. Europe puts a lot more of that ownership, as in like my voice, my data, my everything, that puts it back to the people in comparison to what's happening in other countries. So it's unlikely going to happen in the US anyways, and that's okay because different philosophies. It's unlikely going to be that individually compliant in countries in Asia. Like where I would see it probably or potentially happening is New Zealand, Australia. They tend to be, we've recently seen even ahead of the curve when it comes to curbing usage of under 16s on social media. That's very well received in Europe, for example. In Asia, no. This will stop at the country level. So as long as the governments are in control, everything's fine. As long as the organizations of large are compliant by whatever is coming, companies will be okay. To be honest, what Switzerland and probably other countries will follow suit is putting in place is difficult to govern. So that puts a lot of pressure, especially on larger organizations and social media platforms, particularly trying to make sure that they can actually comply with that in a scalable fashion. I'd be curious to see what else comes. Probably more protectionism to an extent will come up. But now here's the caveat of all of this. So it's all well and good that personal information and copyright laws and all of that are well respected. When we're talking about things like AI, we really need to make sure that information at large, and that doesn't have to be personally identifiable. But if you want to get value out of AI, you need to make sure that you've got access to vast data pools with that. They can and should be anonymized. That's not the question. So personal identifiable information should be taken out. So even when you've got an organization using overseas AI services, you need to make sure that at the top level, yes, you can identify the customer because that's internal information. Of course, we want to know as organizations who's our customer. We want to know all about them because we want to service them better and in the end provide a better offering at large. There's nothing wrong with that if the data is used responsibly. Now, if you're then taking that data and moving it straight somewhere without any removal of personal identifiable information, etc., to some other overseas, for example, server, then you're probably in breach of local as well as maybe in some cases international compliance laws. And some companies just take that for granted because what are the odds of being fined? But then very often we read about them and then you don't want to end up on that. That'll be a bad article to wake up to. Now,
go ahead.
One final part, you can hash all of that. You can take out all the personal identifiable information, still use existing AI services to do whatever analysis that comes there, take it back to the organization itself and reapply, okay, what did we learn and which hash values, which are basically just random codes for the AI, it doesn't mean anything, but coming back into the organization, it's like a key. We can now identify this exact data set to these type of customers. That's an analysis that can then take place on premises again. Totally fine. So we can set that up as an organization, no problem. Some others obviously can't because of how their data structure looks. But that, I think, is really something where especially countries are starting to put barriers up against.
It does seem like it does seem like the past 30 years, the entire public's been screaming about privacy, and now the governments are finally getting on board. I'm just trying to phrase this. What do you hope AI brings us for the future?
Freedom, for the most part. Yeah, because it's a little bit like if used correctly, AI has the potential to give us as individuals access to a wider knowledge base outsiders' point of views. There's plenty of benefits to it. We just need to make sure that we use it responsibly. And I think another thing as well, and there's a difference between how corporations deal with it and how individuals are dealing with it, right? So on the wider front, individuals may also need to learn how to work with AI. Because anyways, I don't have good examples here right now, but obviously everyone has tried different sort of prompts probably over the years and has hopefully seen their prompting skills improve over time. Imagine, or actually go back to the days when we had Google came out, and that was great, right? You're putting in weather, but then weather back then there was no localization. So basically it came up with everything weather. And then I was in Germany at that time, probably when Google came out. And if I would type in weather, I would get anything about the US. Mind you, that's also dial-up internet, so that was equally
Yeah.
challenging. But we've passed all these times, but we had to learn how to deal with the one evolving technology. And that's what we're going to be seeing with AI as well, but at a much faster scale. And the other part is we just had to learn how to use the tool. Because if I wanted to learn about the weather in, I don't know, Berlin or in Munich and so on, I would obviously have to type in weather in whatever target destination. And that's how, I don't know, I just hope that, not just hope, I know that over time AI is going to help us think better and clearer and wider. But two parts still need to happen. One, we need to make sure that guardrails are in place. That's one part. The second thing is overall, we just also need to make sure that we engage with it responsibly. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the take on it.
I echo the sentiment of Godot when I say things like we need to be pumping the internet full of love and understanding and things because it's been like an adolescent child being angry for the past 20 years. It's now time for the internet to grow up and learn how it is to be human and stop hiding behind things. Is Do you
Yeah.
see blockchain becoming a big factor in AI in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably, right? It's we are not too deeply involved on blockchain in full transparency here, but I obviously see tremendous benefits in the technology itself. So I guess from a blockchain in the end can obviously act as
Their
almost like a digital
hasher,
notary, right?
yeah.
It can help us prove what's real and what isn't. And I guess using blockchain, we can also timestamp data in terms of when certain creations have been taking place and when they haven't, because that can be easy to. I'm thinking about breakthrough ideas more than anything else, right? So these that can certainly help preventing stolen identities, preventing stolen. We talked about content creation earlier at the start, or actually before the show. For that, I think it can be very helpful. On top of that, from a guardrail perspective, but I don't know, I might just need to do a little bit more digging into that myself to give a more qualified answer, to be honest.
No worries. I've been following blockchain since Coin's creation and my
Would love to
college
get your
years.
opinion on this.
So I believe or blockchain is actually going to give us the ability to choose or to showcase who's human, who's not. There's your hashing
Yeah,
data gone, right? Because now you have a
yeah,
digital ledger that you can keep separate from your data. I think blockchain actually gives too much power to individuals, and I think that's why governments and organizations might not use it. But in terms of like freedom as an individual, blockchain is needed across all AI in order for us to just verify simple facts. Like you said, in the content, if I create a video and I have a blockchain ID or an NFT related to that video, or my video becomes an NFT, then anybody creating outside of that would have to have my ID to be able to say, hey, this is me. So if they go and create my picture on somebody else, it no longer has that marker that says this is Cody's content. I see it as more of a freedom tool. And I think that's where we're going to have a lot of problems. But I also see, so I'm heavily involved in science and technology discussions on the internet. And I already see a whole new internet being built. So I'm interested to see how that's going to change things in the future. I already know of a few people who are building a brand new internet based on
got it.
blockchain, based on AI. Where it's going to go, if it's going to get anywhere, if governments are going to allow it, that's a whole other question. But I know people are done with not having privacy. So I think that's going to become a
What
big
I heard is
conversation.
blockchain really being like a truth layer for AI. On top of that, that obviously resonates from an audit trail point of view, right? Our normal environment here is less the wider internet, but more enterprise-specific data points. Being able to protect the human creator, for example, that you said, that's great. Yeah.
I'm really excited for the future to pan out, especially with like even Gary Vee's been doing great work in the blockchain space on this stuff. I do want to just like wrap this up. So I want to give you a last little bit to end off on some final thoughts and where people can find you.
Oh, look, it's the easiest way to find me is either go to our website, IntelliPaaS.io. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. That's Matt Soltau. And yeah, besides that, you can find me hopefully on your page associated to this podcast, The Weird Canadian. I really appreciated being on.
Thank you very much for coming on. I do just want to ask one final question just because I'm interested. Out of every, what's the one thing you want built for AI? What's the one thing, Star Trek future, whatever, we're seeing innovations come out like daily now. What's something you want built that you don't know if is being built or would like to see in the future?
The human element, I think you mentioned earlier, was that's obviously there's one part that's missing, and that's been missing in various online engagements completely, right? So different companies have tried different things, whether it came down to avatars or wearing glasses and holograms appearing in front of you. But for AI to be able to create, I guess, a more real connection that goes a little bit deeper, and I'm talking about like from a feeling deeper than what we just have right now, because all of us are just connecting with different forms of screen sizes in the end. Okay, that's outside of connecting personally. Right? But we've gotten so used, whether it's online meetings at work or having conversations like these here, etc. Seldomly we're actually sitting face to face with another. Some are spending their entire life literally behind a screen now. So if AI can help bring back an element of connection, but the important part, that part needs to be genuine and initiated from both sides. I think then that could be that could be quite interesting.
I'm very I agree with you. I'm excited to see on the flip side to that, with AI becoming more prevalent and robots coming out, there's going to be a lot less time that you're going to need to spend on the internet. You're going to want to find. That's why I moved out to the middle of nowhere because resources like people are going to want outdoor experiences, people are going to want adventures because they're going to have more time on their hands. So I moved to a place where tourism is a big booming business. But I think we're going to see that just because of the individuality of people and people really wanting to connect more over the internet. So I hope to as well. And I'll make sure all of the information is down below in the comments for our audience. And to everybody out there, I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And please feel free to reach out if you need anything or want any follow up questions. To everybody out there, stay weird. Perfect. Thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you, Cody. The blockchain question caught me a little off guard, to be honest. I've actually never been asked that,
Huh.
which seems so obvious. Yeah.
Like I said, I've been
All right.
following blockchain since 2011, 2012. I was
Yeah.
involved in the Dogecoin run.
Love it.
So I know a lot about it and I follow a lot of people who talk about it. I think it's becoming what we need to identify humans between AI and stuff. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah. Nice.
All right.
Nice.
So I will follow
Awesome,
up
man.
with you after this and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sounds good. Now, I want to learn a little bit more about what you said about the tourism part.
Mm.
So it's a growing business only in Newfoundland, or is
Uh,
it
So
in that
because
particular part
Canada
where you are?
Yeah, so because Canada has the dispute with the US, Canada's tourist industry has actually boomed.
Yeah,
But I moved out to the island just because there's no people. It costs us less. Like I have a view of the bay here that's absolutely gorgeous, like
love it.
cheaper living, that kind of thing. But then I also started looking into like, tourism's going to become a big industry because everybody's going to have more time to travel. They're going to have more time to spend with their families. They're going to be looking for physical experiences in the world. It's something Gary Vee says a lot. Like he thinks everybody's going to be going to physical experiences in the future. So basically, I've just set up my life to be in a small town where I have a lot of opportunity to build different experiences or different businesses and things like that. So I just moved because I knew everybody's going to be moving away from town or from cities. People are going to want more space. People are going to want more excitement, more adventure. And I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm going to capitalize on this now.
good.
So
Awesome, man. I love that, and I'm glad you found your place there. And I'm sure that also contributed to the name. I'm
Yeah,
sure people thought that was a bit weird, and here we are.
very
Yeah,
much. And hopefully one day in the future we can have a conversation in person.
I would love that. Yes, exactly,
All
exactly.
right.
I have okay. So the story, and that didn't mean that. So I actually had my first international experience in Canada. That had no place on the podcast here now, but I was 11 back then.
Yeah.
And I spent 4 weeks away from my families for the first time with two boys, two girls, and one leader going. There was an organization, obviously, that organized this. They're called CISV, the Children's International Summer Villages. Basically, it was created after the Second World War to advocate for global peace. And
Yeah.
kids at the age of 11 have no prejudice, no anything. So therefore, that's how that came up. Now, Victoria in Vancouver Island was the first like truly international destination where I went. And ever since I knew the world isn't, I'm from Germany, from Hamburg originally. Ever since I knew the world is much bigger than just what's, I
Yeah.
guess, the school compound and maybe a road trip to Italy, which was already very impressive at young age. But anyways, and my desire to be in different places around the world, I think, got fundamentally embedded there. So I think that's really where the seed was planted. I've
Very
lived
fair.
in 7 countries now and obviously traveled and visited many more. But yeah, so
Yeah.
it's been, yeah, like I owe really a lot to Canada when it comes to giving me
It,
yeah, this
it's funny you
desire
mentioned
to
that.
be all over the
It's
place.
funny you
Yeah.
mentioned that because I had a friend that did the similar thing. She went to down in South America somewhere. But yeah,
Okay.
like even just a little bit of background about me. I've been going to Cuba since I was a teenager with my parents. My
Mm.
parents have been going there since the early 2000s, and we now run a nonprofit there. But yeah, like
Oh, nice.
that, just going and seeing a different culture, experiencing something different really gives you perspective on how the world is, what you really value as a human, that kind of thing. So I completely understand.
Can I ask, sorry, I know we're over time here, but you mentioned Cuba specifically. I haven't been to Cuba yet, but I heard that of late resorts have had to shut down, and apparently almost like the
My,
real crisis that everyone always thought was going to come is happening now. Is that actually the case?
yeah, my parents just showed up yesterday and they canceled all the flights. They're in Cuba right now, not sure if they're going to get home. But yes, the since the US took out Venezuela's leader, there's no more
Yeah,
oil coming to the island. So they're not getting any
at
resources
all.
now. Like they're completely shut off from outside. I'm really hoping the US comes and steps in soon because the communism is getting out of hand there. I'm really hoping the US steps in. But the
Okay.
people there are amazing. Ingenious. They're beautiful people. I
A
couldn't
few
say,
Cubans, but
yeah,
I've just never been. Because the other thing is also like I'm curious to go, would really love to go, but I got to be careful not to have a Cuban stamp in my passport because yeah, for
yeah,
then
the
obvious
sanctions.
reasons.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I honestly, I think once the U.S. does takes it over or helps out and steps in, it'll be back to normal. It'll be a little bit different, but you'll still have that nostalgia that they have. Like everything's from the 60s there. It's
Yeah.
so fascinating. Anyways,
Mm.
I'll let you go and we'll talk later.
Yeah, look, thank you. It's heading towards the evening here now, but Cody, I appreciate your time. Thank you. And yeah, I hope we get to connect in person at some point. That would be lovely.
That'd be great. Perfect. See you later.
Perfect. Thanks, mate. Cheers. Bye.